On February 4th, 2017, Wikileaks posted this photo of Svalbard's seed vault with a question: what is Vault 7? Later the same day, another tweet, this time with an archival photo of stolen Nazi gold. Where is Vault 7? And finally, when is Vault 7? With a photo of a jet engine. People went wild. You do not show a jet engine on the internet expecting everyone to stay calm. Guesses ranged from WikiLeaks confirming a conspiracy behind 9/11 to unmasking a shadow government or an extinction-level event. The truth was, of course, a bit more reasonable. WikiLeaks is, or maybe was, a media organization founded on the premise of publishing secret or otherwise restricted materials. At its head was Julian Assange, a hacker from Australia. Think of him what you want, but the guy has a flair for some artistry. Every leak on the site was published with build-up specifically designed to rile up the audience. The payoff wasn't far away. In a few days, WikiLeaks published a teaser story about America's Central Intelligence Agency hacking France, a taste of what's to come. Vault 7 wasn't about shadow governments. It was about the Central Intelligence Agency and its dirty deeds. The public was primed. On March 7th, 2017, the first batch of the actual leak was posted.
Breaking news. The CIA has lost control of the majority of its hacking arsenal, which could fall into the wrong hands around the world.
It was cryptically dubbed Year Zero and contained over 8,700 files. A press release was there too, editorializing some highlights. It went all the way. These files, it said, documented the entire hacking capacity of the CIA. The leaked documents came from CIA's arguably most powerful hacking unit, the Operations Support Branch, OSB. It cataloged everything the OSB was doing, all the tools, projects, and other points of interest relating to its offensive capabilities. The tools were from 2013 to 2016. The descriptions weren't very user-friendly, of course. They were intended for the agency's hackers and executives. Some were lengthy write-ups and explanations. Others contained only short notes or links to third-party research. Yet other documents were more elaborate. They had proof of concepts for advanced hacking techniques or entire user guides for penetration tools. What could have been breached with these? Well, everything. Windows, Android, macOS, Linux, even Solaris operating system. In theory, almost every computer and smartphone in the world. There was documentation of Dare Stark, a backdoor the CIA just adapted to work on OS X Mavericks. Gerfalcon, a tool to steal passwords from Linux machines. Cascade. We actually don't know what it did, but whatever that was, the CIA was teaching it to defeat the most popular antiviruses. These tools, and hundreds of others. WikiLeaks and the media presented this as proof that the CIA can hack everything and everybody, that its reach is boundless and its tentacles are unstoppable. Scary stuff, right? People behind the leak, in WikiLeaks and everywhere else, felt that way too, and they wanted to spark a debate about the ethics of having such power. The release generously quoted the source of the leak, an insider from the CIA, a shadowy figure who, of course, wanted to remain anonymous. Remember, this was just a few years after the most famous whistleblower story in history, Edward Snowden. He shared thousands of documents of the National Security Agency, disclosing how the NSA basically runs a worldwide surveillance network with little oversight or accountability. Vault 7's leaker wanted to show that the CIA was no better, or perhaps even worse, because its surveillance arsenal was no longer in its control.
According to WikiLeaks, the CIA has lost control of the majority of its cyber weapons, this arsenal of cyber weapons that it has. Things like malware, viruses, Trojans, and various remote control systems.
The release claimed that all the leaked files were freely and unlawfully shared among all kinds of government hackers and contractors, used far beyond their intended purpose. Was this true? Well, it's complicated. Not everything in the story was what it seemed, and not everybody involved in it was honest. It's a crucial point that we can't avoid. We've looked through the files and the reporting on them, the investigations that have been conducted later, and the fallout in the media. And with a high level of confidence, we can say that there's a lot of BS in it. A lot. Wikileaks exaggerated some of the things that are in the files. The media exaggerated them further, and the CIA added its own spin to it too. We could have done this video the usual YouTube way, regurgitate whatever other people said, slap some AI-generated visuals on top of it, and call it a day. But we didn't. We did our homework. Because we have a team of researchers and scriptwriters and editors and producers and even one veteran voice artist who does such a good job, everybody routinely confuses him for AI. Yeah, guys, I can't figure this out. Is this a compliment or a roast? Anyway, we're a human-first team, and we want to stay that way. We're not against AI, though, not at all, because we know that there are great AI tools that work very well for the tasks they're designed for. Like this video's sponsor, One.com. Here's the thing. Vibe-coded websites sometimes get a bad rap, because the people who do them don't use the right tools and don't know what they're doing. Believe us, we actually vibe-coded a website for an Easter egg in one of our previous videos. We used ChatGPT for it. It was bad. One.com is a platform that's designed to make an actual working website that looks and works like a real website should. And not only that, it's a one-stop shop for basically the entire online presence you might need, like the website, the eShop, email, domain, hosting, and all the business tools, already connected. As you can see, AI assistance with web design is just a part of the package, but what an assistant it is. One.com's AI is called Ada, and she's designed to do it all in one go. You tell her what you need, and she does it for you. Setting up your online presence takes minutes, not weeks, and you can spend your time doing things you really have to do, like deep diving into leaked documents of your favorite intelligence agency. One.com is really how AI services should be, so if you're interested in giving them a try, use the link in the description and get 75% off by using code CybernewsAdaAI. Thanks again to One.com for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the BS. If you recall how the leak was covered in the media, you probably remember two of its nastiest bits: that the CIA can spy on you through your TV and hijack your car to crash it. Public outcry to that was massive. Everybody who owns a TV or a car could connect these revelations to their own fears. But both of these claims were incredibly exaggerated, courtesy of Assange's flair for artistry. Take Weeping Angel, a framework the media presented as the CIA's way to spy on you through a smart TV. Most reporting ignored the fact that it only worked on select models of older Samsungs, and that it required direct physical access. To use it, the CIA had to pick a target with a particular model of a TV, and slip an agent into the room to tinker with it. Not a single thing in the leak hinted at Weeping Angel being a blanket surveillance tool. Blanket surveillance was the NSA's job, not the CIA's. The car crashing claim was even more ridiculous. In the entire leak, vehicle hacking was mentioned only once, in some meeting notes. Somebody noted that vehicle systems are a promising line of work, and that the CIA still hasn't looked into that. So the leak didn't say that the CIA could assassinate people by hacking their cars. In fact, it said exactly the opposite. All of this reporting didn't sit well with the CIA. Internally, the agency was in turmoil. When it came to speaking to the public, for the most part, it refused to confirm or deny, though. But somebody at the agency probably felt that enough is enough, and decided to throw a bit of their own BS into the fire. Some CIA officials went on record and said that they were actually aware of the leak a year in advance. A whole year. Of course, how couldn't they be? That's the CIA we're talking about. It controls everything, right? And that was a lie. Thanks to unclassified bits of an internal investigation, we know that the agency had no idea about the documents getting copied, and the Wikileaks announcement caught it completely off guard. On that topic, Wikileaks claimed that the CIA lost control of the documents and that they were widely shared all over the place before ending up in the public. That was also not true. All evidence points to the OSB keeping a tight grip on its arsenal. The whole unit worked in what was basically a bunker, cut off from the outside world. OSB was very small, very secret, and very insulated. That was actually one of the reasons nobody noticed the theft that occurred. And it was by far not the only CIA unit engaged in hacking. We know that for a fact. Wikileaks' claim that Vault 7 represents the CIA's entire hacking arsenal was also a massive stretch. The CIA had an entire center for cyber intelligence, and the OSB wasn't important but by far not the only part of it. All these exaggerations and lies may make it sound like Vault 7 wasn't that big of a deal, but that would be a huge mistake. The OSB was crucial to the CIA. The leak left the agency in shambles, and the meat of the story was about hacking tools that did exist. Real exploits that could breach almost every personal computer and phone, and further dumps of Vault 7 only proved that. The second batch of documents was dropped on March 23rd. It was much smaller, but this time it had a theme: Apple. You know, this pointlessly persistent myth that Apple's products are impenetrable to hacking? Well, not when the CIA came knocking.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I am no one.
Okay, PC, what are you...
Listen, friend, it's not very safe for me right now, you understand? There's a lot of spyware out there. It sneaks into your system, follows you wherever you may go. In fact, take these.
No.
They'll keep you safe.
PC, honestly, I don't need them. Really, I'm good. I run Mac OS 10, so I don't have to worry about your spyware and viruses. You take them.
The agency had a whole suite of tools for opening pretty much any Apple product to date. A lot of those exploits were also persistent. You simply couldn't get rid of them, whatever you did. Take Sonic Screwdriver, for example. It was a piece of software designed to infect adapters for Macs. Connecting a compromised one would open a computer up. Then another infection would put an implant on the motherboard. You could change your hard drive. You could reinstall your OS, and even some of the firmware. The implant would survive all of that, and it would keep the door open for the CIA to spy on you at its leisure. In fact, the OSB had a whole catalog of incredibly complicated spyware for specifically these cases. The agency could get files from your computer, read your passwords, configure your networks, basically enslave your computer without you knowing it. Of course, there was a limitation. Just like the Samsung TVs, a lot of the CIA's Apple malware had to be installed physically. The O in OSB wasn't there just for show. The hackers in this branch were supporting other operations the CIA was running. Every piece of their malware was basically an artisan gadget designed for a particular spying operation. Like we already said, blanket surveillance was the NSA's job, not the CIA's. But this opened another can of worms. If the CIA wanted to install Sonic Screwdriver, it needed to have spies in Apple's supply chain. Did the CIA have spies in Apple's supply chain? Did it have spies in the supply chains of all the tech giants? Another scary thought. The tech giants ignored it, but they couldn't ignore the reports about vulnerabilities. Apple certainly couldn't. It did everything in its power to avoid responsibility, claiming that all the exploits were simply outdated. They were from years ago. It's 2017 after all. Those vulnerabilities are patched. No need to worry. Sure thing, Sherlock. All the tools in the leak were from 2013 to 2016. But if the CIA was able to crack the latest Apple devices back then, what's there to suggest that it can't hack the newest ones now? Then, it came time for an even scarier dump. Marble Framework, the most impactful of all Vault 7 revelations. What was Marble? According to Wikileaks, it was designed for one thing: masking the CIA's traces. You see, hackers aren't very keen on leaving their business cards after an attack happens. State-sponsored ones definitely don't. When researchers investigate an intrusion, they look for clues that might betray who did it. A bit of reused code, a previously leaked tool, a snippet of a recognizable error message, even a word of a foreign language. The process isn't much different from investigating a real-world crime, where detectives look for artifacts and fingerprints. Marble was designed to deal with that. It wiped the CIA's fingerprints after an attack. Of course, obfuscation isn't exclusive to the CIA. All high-level threat actors do it. We even know that Marble wasn't that widely used. Only 2 pieces of previously known malware bore traces of its fingerprint remover. But Marble also had something else, an additional function described in Wikileaks' write-up. A function that, after wiping the fingerprints, would add the ones taken from other state-sponsored hackers. With it, the CIA could pretend that its target was hacked by somebody else, or hack somebody, and then blame another country for that. The CIA had a tool for staging false flag attacks. Talk about inducing paranoia. Alright, no matter how tempting it is to believe that every cyber attack in the world is secretly staged by the CIA, there's a bit of over-sensationalizing in this claim too. Marble's false flag functionality was actually pretty crude. All it did was plant some random words in Chinese, Russian, Korean, Arabic, or Farsi in the source code of the malware. That's it. The gibberish examples were there, and from the way the whole thing worked, it was clear that it wouldn't fool a serious researcher. But here's the kicker. Marble wasn't the only false flag-related tool in Vault 7 leaks. There was also a component library called Umbrage, a collection of tools and techniques taken from other hacking groups, both state-sponsored actors and cybercriminals alike. In theory, it wasn't that different from similar libraries hosted by your regular cybersecurity companies. In practice, it could also be used for impersonating other hacker groups. But wait, it gets worse. A snippet from an internal CIA chat implied that CIA hackers were already doing that. The snippet concerned Kaspersky's investigation of Equation Group, the popular name for the NSA's hackers. And yes, this was the first time we got official confirmation that Equation Group is really the NSA. The CIA hackers analyzed the mistakes of their colleagues from the other agency and basically called them too smart for their own good. Apparently, the NSA guys were too reliant on custom tricks and reused their own code too much. Basically, the CIA hinted that if you want to stay out of sight, just pretend to be somebody else. We just had to talk about this with somebody who was involved with the story, so we asked Jake Williams for the comment. For those of you who don't know him, Jake was a member of Equation Group. He worked for the NSA's Tailored Access Operations team and was doxxed by the shadow brokers. He also gave a talk about cyber false flags at Black Hat. It's hard to find anybody more qualified than Jake.
I think everybody knew there was a possibility that intelligence organizations were conducting cyber false flags, cyber false flag operations, trying to pin one of their operations on somebody else. But I don't think we'd ever had any real discussion about it before, right? It's certainly not an official channel. There's a world of difference going to a stakeholder and saying, this is in the realm of possibilities, and here's an intelligence service that's talking about doing it, and not just talking a little bit about doing it. They've assigned a cover term to it. There's open discussions. I say open, but discussions about it in their development wikis, and so presumably has already been done or is in progress. And I think that changes the. I think that changes that.
The mere possibility that the CIA considered planting false flags, no matter how crude some of their tools were, forced the whole cybersecurity community to think twice about knee-jerk reactions and attribution. It's no longer enough to see a snippet of foreign language or another previously known signature. It was never enough, but Vault 7 made that painfully obvious.
So many of the reports that we get where it says, oh, it was a hack and it aligned with this one IOC, you're not this indicator of compromise, right? Oftentimes people jump in and they're like, oh, well, that proves that it's this particular threat actor. And it's like, no. The second that indicator's public, I can go plant that same indicator, right?
That's why attribution of cyber attacks is such a difficult task. It requires months of exhaustive research. And even then, you're not getting certainty. You're only getting a possibility. Major groups such as Fancy Bear, Volt Typhoon, or Charming Kitten performed a laundry list of operations that made detecting their footprints maybe a bit easier, but one footprint is still never enough. And since we know so much about the CIA's toolkit, you might have a question. Were its own attacks ever attributed? Well, they were. Cybersecurity company Symantec even assigned it a hacker name, Longhorn. There was a long list of indicators of compromise associated with it, and Vault 7 just confirmed that Longhorn is indeed the CIA. Claiming that the CIA attacked somebody without those indicators isn't attribution. It's just silliness.
A real analyst, right, a real threat intelligence analyst would say, this behavior is consistent with this other threat actor, not this is CIA. So based on that single piece of evidence, yeah, I mean, you could say CIA did it. You could also say anyone that went to my 2019 Black Hat talk, right? Or watched on YouTube, right? Has done it too, right? So I understand the everybody loves a good conspiracy, right? So everyone loves a good conspiracy.
A few days after Wikileaks posted the documentation of the Marble framework, the CIA decided that enough is enough.
Time to call out Wikileaks for what it really is. A non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia.
Some senior Trump administration officials and CIA executives even discussed assassinating Assange, according to former intelligence officials.
Meanwhile, WikiLeaks continued publishing the leaks. On April 7, 2017, the documentation of Grasshopper Framework was dropped. It did to Windows basically the same thing dark matter did to Apple. On April 14th, WikiLeaks published the documentation of Hive, a tool for breaking HTTPS websites. On April 21st, Weeping Angel, a how-to on monitoring people through a Samsung TV. There was also Brutal Kangaroo, a surveying tool for air-gapped networks, and Outlaw Country, a network redirection tool for breached Linux systems. That one definitely freaked out a lot of sysadmins with a superiority complex. Of particular note is Project Scribbles. It marked documents so that the CIA could trace where they came from. Very useful for dealing with your internal leaks. But Scribbles wasn't very effective. Just like many other OSB tools, it only worked in very narrow circumstances, only on a couple versions of Microsoft Office, and would bug out if the infected document was opened by any other app. Which is probably why Scribbles didn't help catching the shadowy insider behind Vault 7 leaks. The FBI did that. At some point in 2017, the CIA started an internal investigation to figure out what went wrong. After all, the leak wasn't discovered in advance. The CIA had no idea what's happening up until the documents got posted. At first, there was a lot of fear that this was a foreign nation-state attack. The case of shadow brokers was still fresh in the memory of all involved, and in that one, the NSA got beaten by a foreign intelligence service. The CIA could have fallen for the same trap. As the investigation progressed, the CIA figured out that this isn't the case. The documents couldn't have been stolen from outside. They had to be leaked from within. The FBI got involved to track the leaker down. That didn't take long. His name was Joshua Adam Schulte. He was a former CIA employee who coincidentally left the agency in 2016. His self-assigned hacker name was Badass, although associates knew him by a less flattering moniker, Voldemort. According to pretty much everybody who knew Schulte, he was an extremely abrasive person. In 6 years, he managed to alienate almost everybody at the CIA, up to exchanging death threats with some of his colleagues. Still, he was a skilled hacker. Besides developing tools like Brutal Kangaroo, he also worked as a systems administrator at the Operations Support Branch, and so had access to the entire hacking arsenal of the CIA. The perfect position if you want to leak something like Vault 7. On that note, he really did steal Vault 7 files. The whole talk about those files freely circulating among hackers, that was another lie. Later reports and investigations proved that the only way for those files to get out from OSB systems was a local systems administrator with a grudge. There's a lot of debate regarding what motivated Schulte to do what he did. Several of his coworkers and even classmates gave interviews to the media, and all of them agree that Schulte wasn't the type to complain about government overreach. In fact, he seemed perfectly fine with that overreach. He even called for the death penalty to other famous whistleblowers. Schulte's motives were probably personal. He left the CIA after a rough conflict, the same one involving death threats. The most realistic story investigators could piece together shows that Schulte just wanted to insult his former employer, slam the door on his way out. That did not prevent the FBI from finding him, arresting him, and seizing his devices. Of course, being a hacker, he had stellar operational security. His personal laptop had 3 layers of encryption. The passwords to all of them were stored in plain text on his phone, though. Then everything escalated even further. Supposedly, along with the evidence of stolen files, the FBI also found, the material we probably shouldn't mention on YouTube. There's a lot of debate about that too. Isn't it convenient that the person the CIA wants behind bars also committed an unrelated crime? Schulte himself said the files weren't his. Supposedly, some of his friends used the server to store their stuff. The FBI claims there's enough evidence to the contrary. Schulte's Google history was full of very nasty things. He was an outspoken proponent of decriminalizing CSIM, and even his classmates agreed that he was a creep back in high school. On the other hand, everybody loves a good conspiracy.
What I will say is if you wanted to plant evidence with somebody, right, that creates a very unsympathetic audience, right, that is the way to go, right? It's trivial to do, right? Now, I know everybody, right, who gets charged with CSAM says, that's not mine, right? Some hacker put it there. But But I think in this situation, right, we have to give that we have to explore that option a little bit, or that possibility a little bit more, considering, the fact that we're talking about government hackers, right?
What followed was the first and the infamous trial of Schulte. It was a mess. Such a mess that it would take multiple videos to explain it. The case was mishandled, crucial information was leaked, the CIA managed to lose some hard drives with copies of the evidence. At one point, Schulte even claimed being a member of Anonymous and holding the American government to ransom for $50 million. By 2022, the court put a stop to that and started the trial over. In some of his public letters, Schulte basically admitted being the Vault 7 leaker, but in the retrial, he still pleaded not guilty. That did not help. In 2024, Schulte was sentenced to 40 years, and the story of Vault 7 finally closed. It remains one of the most damaging intelligence leaks to ever happen, and certainly the biggest one for the CIA, not only because of the things it revealed, but also because of what it implied, and all of the controversy it generated.
I mean, it just, I guess all the way through, right? It's soup to nuts, like the whole thing just smelled bad. And again, I know everyone loves a good conspiracy, right? I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I will say that if you were trying to make it look like a conspiracy, good job, you've checked all the boxes.
The mishandling of the case, the false flag frameworks, the idea that the CIA can hack your TV and your car. Sure, the last thing was basically a hoax, and even the false flag capabilities were overstated. But a lot of people took that seriously, and a lot of people heard that the CIA wants to hack their cars and their TVs. And so, Vault 7 did more damage to the CIA than Snowden and shadow brokers ever did to the NSA. And that's even taking into account that the NSA was running a globe-spanning surveillance network, and the CIA could only hack specific targets under very specific circumstances. On the other hand, the how-tos and the proof of concepts that the Vault 7 leaks made public were even more damaging.
The shadow brokers dumps, they had weaponized exploits, sure, and those are great until the patch gets applied. Vault 7 was a bit more of a jump start in lessons learned for any country trying to put together a network exploitation program. What worked, what hadn't, and so discussions around that, and not in official documentation style, but even worse, developer wiki style. The tutorial on what do you need to think about as you're building a network exploitation program, and at least the development of tools behind it. That's person years and tens of millions of dollars, and if not more, right, in lessons learned that are just there for the taking now because of that compromise.
And that was the legacy of Vault 7, the CIA's biggest intelligence failure, which gave us another look behind the curtains of international cyber war. It was also the peak of Wikileaks. In late 2017, the website tried to cause another splash with what it called Vault 8, but the leak only contained source code and development logs of some of the CIA's cyber infrastructure. It was a big deal, sure, but by far not on the same level as Vault 7. By 2018, WikiLeaks activity basically stopped. In large part, that was the result of the American government setting its sights on the organization. There's just no going back from being called a foreign intelligence service. The hunt for its founder, Julian Assange, was in full swing. If somebody wanted to leak something big, WikiLeaks just wasn't the right platform to do it.
I'm not here to say anything nice about Assange. That's for damn sure. Those words will never come out of my mouth, right? But Assange is trash. That can also be true at the same time that WikiLeaks did a public good in several circumstances. WikiLeaks was hugely put on the map with this, I fear that they flew too close to the sun with that. The U.S. government, after WikiLeaks, by and large, because of the Vault 7, dumps that put them on the map for the government, not great, right? But again, I don't want our government going after folks because they're publishing data the government doesn't like, because that's not freedom of the press. That's the opposite of that.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, keep in mind that we also did a full documentary about the shadow brokers and the NSA unit they breached. We also did one of the NSA's efforts to hack Huawei. See you there, and bye.